Hello, I'm Matt Carpenter, and this is the Good Life Podcast. Hello. Today we have a special bonus edition of the Good Life Podcast, and I'm interviewing my daughter, Phoebe. Phoebe's been reading for quite a while, and I thought it would be good to talk with her about books, especially books for older kids and young adults. Years ago, before I was a dad, I thought, I always want to read whatever my kids are interested in reading before they actually read it. Because I said, then I'll know what's in the book and I can guide them through it. And then Phoebe has come along and has blown my grand ideas away because she can read faster than I can and remembers it. But that is helpful because she's able to give me some really good feedback on books. So, Phoebe, I'm glad that you are taking time to talk about this. So let's just start with this. When you're looking at a book, I know certain books appeal to you and certain ones do not. So what do you look for in a book?
I look for excitement, something enjoyable to listen to and will hold your attention. But also, I like to look for books with good morals to them.
All right, so I know that there's a lot of people who have written about that very thing. One guy that comes to mind, his name is Vegan Gregorian, and he's written an entire book called Tending the Heart of Virtue on the importance of children's literature and the way that it forms morals. And of course, he got some of that from Russell Kirk, who I like a lot. So those are important elements to a book, but also something we've discussed at times here in our family is there are books that have good morals, but it's not just about morality. If a book has good morals, but it's poorly written, then you don't enjoy it very much.
No, I really do not.
So, and there are some of those books that you've read before. I know that you've come to me and said, Dad, I did not enjoy it. So just because it has a virtuous person in it doesn't mean it's a virtuous book.
No, sir. Not at all.
So, okay, let's go ahead and get to some of the books that you enjoy. I know that there are books that you've read, and most of these I've read as well, or we've read as a family. So just tell us about them. And this is not just knowing for your sake, but this is also about helping other people to discover books that appeal to young adults. So what are some books that you have enjoyed in the past?
Well, one of them is The Mysterious Benedict Society, which is actually a series of books put out by an author whose name I don't remember at the moment. But they're about this team of children who try to help bring down some bad people. It's set slightly into the future and is really good.
I know we enjoyed that as a family. That was one of those books that all of you kids would say when we'd say it's time to stop reading, no, please, let's just read a few more pages. And it was sanctifying on everyone's account because you all would want us to read more. And sometimes we would and sometimes we would not. So how many books are there in that series?
5, I believe.
Okay. And which one is your favorite of those?
Well, to tell you the truth, the first one is really, really good. but the second one is probably my favorite.
Okay, what is it about that second book that is your favorite?
Well, just being able to go to different countries. Sorry, I'm kind of a spoiler here. But
No problem.
yeah.
Okay, good. So the Mysterious Benedict Society, or the entire series of the Benedict Society, I have wondered actually, and I know I'm not the only one, but I have wondered to what degree the author is using the idea of Saint Benedict, the Christian monk who founded the order of Saint Benedict, because in the book you have a wise older man who calls this group of kids together, and they have a kind of monastic life when they're living in his home. And I won't give away any more of the story than that, but I've wondered about that. So, okay, what's another?
Well, another series, slightly lesser known than this, is called Mr. Pipe, or the first one is called Mr. Pipes and the British Hen Makers. It's about these two kids from America who come to England on vacation and meet this old organ, this old man who plays an organ, and he teaches them all about hen makers and the bugs. There are even they even print off some of those hymns and put them in. It's very enjoyable.
So it's not, though, just a list of books. I mean, there's a plot behind it,
yes.
though.
In the first one, they travel around the countryside and hear about people from usually around the Reformation period.
Okay. I'm guessing probably if it's British hymn makers that Isaac Watts, they'll talk about Isaac Watts and Charles Wesley.
Yes.
And so, anyway, I know you have thoroughly enjoyed that. Now, you said there's some other books in that series. So, now who's the author again of that?
Douglas Bond. He lives in Tacoma, Washington. Not too far from the place we used to live in Idaho, actually.
Okay. And what are some of the other books that you've read in that series?
Well, I have read Mr. Pipes and the Psalms and Hymns of the Reformation. They travel around to Reformation sites. And I have read the last one called The Accidental Voyage.
So that does not start with Mr. Pipes, dun 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 dun. That actually has, so that, is there anything different about that than the other books?
No, not really. They're still traveling around.
All right. Okay. So what's another book that you've enjoyed, or series that you've enjoyed?
Well, while we're on series instead of books, I'll go with 100 Cupboards. It's a fun book about a kid who discovers a bunch of cupboards by the plaster in his wall, actually, and travels to different places.
Now, the author of those books is one that everyone is probably familiar with in our circles. That's Nate Wilson, or N.D. Wilson, as he goes by his pen name. So, you've read all the books in that series as well.
Yes, sir.
So there's 100 Cupboards, and then
Dandelion Fire and the Chestnut King.
Dandelion Fire and the Chestnut King. So, yes, that probably, I think, speaking for myself, my favorite series that he has written.
There is another book that I really like for its portrayal of the Inklings. And it's called Looking for the King. It's a fictional story about centering around a young man and a young woman who are visiting Arthurian sites. And even once he gets to sit in on one of their meetings.
The author I know of that book is David C. Downing, and he's written several books on C.S. Lewis and the Inklings. So I know that book is delightful because he actually takes the words of Inklings, Tolkien and Lewis and Charles Williams, and inserts them into the novel. So that's not made, that was not written for kids, but I know you expressed a lot of enjoyment in it.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Well, good. That is a good novel to bring up there, and not one that a lot of people have written. Now, it's common for people to think that, modern novels are great, but we don't want to actually get into older works of literature. But I know you've read some are assigned to you, but then there's some that you've just picked up. So tell us about some classic works of literature that you actually have enjoyed and would read on your own.
Well, so I have really enjoyed Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. It is probably one of my favorite of his works, and I have just really enjoyed that. It has a really sad ending, but it's a very good book.
So what is it about the book? I mean, the plot is set during the French Revolution, but what is it, if you could put into one sentence, what is it about the book that grabs you so much?
I can't.
Okay. I know one thing when we talked before, one sentence is kind of difficult, but when you and Amanda were talking about this book, the way that Charles Dickens depicts the characters is very strong. He does a really good job in character development. So, yes, I would agree that it's a very strong book, and it's one that you don't have to be an adult to enjoy. So, are there any others of those types of works?
Well, there's one that I'm thinking of just off the top of my head, and Lucy Maud Montgomery's Anne of Green Gables is a classic, and I really enjoy it, and it's just a great book.
That's another that we read early. I mean, when you were very young, we were reading that book, and you enjoyed it because it's not complicated. It just presents characters in Avonlea, which is the fictional town on Prince Edward Island, where Marilla and Matthew and Anne live, and it is commonly thought that is a girl's novel, but I can say for myself, it's not just a novel for girls, because there are men, even though Anne is the main character, there are men in the book, and she depicts life not overly. I mean, Anne is very romantically minded, not romantic love, but just in general a romantic. But she does a good job. Ellen Montgomery does a good job in talking about the different, interesting, unique people that make up Avonlea. Now, this is not a classic work of literature, but talking about Avonlea reminds me of it. In our family, we really like books that depict small town life, and we're going through one of them again right now, which I know you've already read this, and your mom and I read this, oh goodness, before y'all were born, and that's Jan Karen's Mitford series.
Yes, sir.
So, can you tell us a little bit about Mitford, just what's there?
Well, it's got that small town feel to it that makes it endearing, and the people are solid. They're kind. They're also pretty funny.
Yes.
Quirky. Some will show up just when they don't seem to be needed at the moment. Such as, well, I'm giving a little bit of a spoiler here.
That's all right.
The dog. That huge dog.
Yes.
Barnabas.
It's a book that it actually does approach some difficult situations. It's not an empty, superfluous book. But yes, Jan Karen's Mitford series is a delight to read. So you also, and I know you've gotten this from me, you enjoy mystery novels. So tell us just a couple of mystery writers that young adults, in addition to regular adults, could read.
Agatha Christie's novels are really good. One of my favorites is Cards on the Table, just because it's complex.
Now, there are, Agatha Christie has two main detectives. One is Hercule Poirot, and the other is Miss Marple. So, which detective is in this novel?
Hercule Poirot.
Okay. So, what is the name of it again?
Cards on the Table.
Cards on the Table. And personally, I like the book of short stories called The Labors of Hercules that she wrote. That Poirot is the primary character in that, and The Labors of Hercules, he actually takes on different cases that mimic the 12 labors of the Greek demigod Hercules. So it's an interesting twist just in itself, but of course it has fantastic, unique mysteries. Almost all those stories are fascinating. There are a few that are not quite as enjoyable, but again, out of the 12, I think at least 10 of them are wonderful. So, okay, so Agatha Christie, anybody else?
Dorothy Sayers, yet another female mystery writer, for her Lord Peter Wimsey stories.
Yes. Lord Peter Wimsey is good, and I will say there is adult language in these. So, this is not for you to teach your 5-year-old proper grammar necessarily, the words that you want them to use, particularly around guests and such. But this is good mystery writing. So, and if you want an introduction to Dorothy Sayers, Phoebe, what would you say? What's one Lord Peter Wimsey? What's a book that has him in it that you would suggest?
Well, for starters, I guess you could go with either the first book, and go through them all, or you could, this is my preference, to go with the short stories.
Okay.
Those have a few of her, well, if you go with the complete short stories of Dorothy Sayers, those have a few other detectives in them too.
Right, Montague Egg, but Peter Wimsey is the primary detective in most of those stories. Okay, so that's mysteries, and personally I would suggest G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown, although the Father Brown stories have a lot of, they can be kind of dense, and they bring in some philosophy that younger teenagers may not get very well. But G.K. Chesterton did a good job writing mystery novels. So, okay, ghost stories. I know you like ghost stories. That's something we've discussed. Tell us about some ghost stories, or some ghost story authors.
Well, Russell Kirk, I've read a few of his. They're mostly adult, but they are really good.
Right. I've been selective about what I've let you read by Russell Kirk. Not that it's bad, but they are mature, and they require you need a little bit more age for some of the themes. But yes, Russell Kirk is really good. His short stories are wonderful. Who are some other ghost story authors?
Andrew Caldecott is his Not Exactly Ghosts is really good. I have thoroughly enjoyed them.
Right. Now, as the title suggests, these are not only books, these are not just stories they're not horror stories. I wouldn't let you read them if they were horror stories. But why is the title, Phoebe, why do you think it's called Not Exactly Ghosts?
It's that mysterious twist that you can never identify if there was a ghost or not. You can't tell. There is no trace and no explanation. It could have been a quirk of your mind, a thought shadow in a corner.
Which makes it more realistic and actually gives it a kind of edge that other ghost story writers don't. Like someone like M.R. James, you know that there's ghosts in those stories usually.
Yes.
But Caldecott is not so much. Now, is there one particular story? Because some of Andrew Caldecott's you can find online. So, is there one particular story of his that you like?
The Quintet. It's about these four people sit up, or 4 or 5, sit up late at night trying to keep awake till New Year's Day, and they tell each other ghostly stories, things that they might have imagined, but which are quite enjoyable.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, there is humor, and there humor writers, and I know our family has enjoyed a lot of humorous poems over the years. So who are some humor writers that you like?
If you're going for just really funny, you would probably go for George Ade, or Ade's Fables, or Fables and Slang. Okay,
so George Ade is not someone it's not a common name. He used to be a common name in the United States, but not many people know him. Any particular thing about him? I mean, what do his stories depict usually, or is there one type of thing he talks about?
If it's okay, I would like to read to you a passage from one of my favorites.
Sure, go ahead.
Alright, Ade's Fable. The new fable of the private agitator and what he cooked up. Ambition came with sterling silver breastplate and flaming sword and sat beside Tad, aged 5. The wee hopeful lived in a frame house with box pillars in front and hollyhocks leading down toward the pike. He talked numbers to himself as he sped along and mumbled over the important letters he was about to dictate. Those who were pushed out of his way would overhear a scrap or two of the raving and think he was balmy.
and that balmy is again, that's not a term that we often hear, but it's one meaning crazy in older English. So good. So George Ade, and then I know that there's another author that we all have enjoyed in our home for humor.
P.G. Wodehouse.
Yes.
Jeeves books.
The Jeeves stories they're fantastic. If you are having trouble, if you're discouraged or sad, certainly Wodehouse can present a situation that makes life seem a little bit lighter. So, any particular Jeeves novel you like, Phoebe, more than others?
For me, I think the ones I can't think of any names at the moment, but I like the ones with his Aunt Agatha and her husband Lord Worplesdon and his daughter Florence.
Okay, so yes, the two main characters in the Jeeves stories are Bertie, or Bertram Wooster, and his butler Jeeves. And Bertram, or Bertie, has two aunts. One is his Aunt Agatha.
The one who breaks bottles with her teeth and gnaws rats.
Yes. Bertie says that she breaks bottles with her teeth and she gnaws rats, and which is not true, but he just has very, very descriptive language, and that's what's great about Woodhouse is he has command of the English language, and he presents it in a way that will make you really laugh. He's one of the few authors I know, for me, who I have to be careful where I read him when I'm by myself, because when I'm in public and I read P.G. Woodhouse, I will actually sometimes start laughing. I made the mistake one time. I was giving a final exam in a class. It was timed as a teacher, and so I'd graded everything else, so I had nothing to do. So I started reading, and I was standing up in front of the class, and I'm reading this Woodhouse book, and I started snickering, and like all the time when you're not supposed to laugh and something's funny, it makes you want to laugh even more, to the point that I can still remember one student's face who thought I just had a morbid sense of humor because I was giving them a test and I was laughing about it, which it was not the case, but it was so funny. I drew on the board the line that Woodhouse wrote that was so funny, and then most of the students were laughing as well by the time I finished it. So anyway, so yes, P.G. Woodhouse is great. Now we also we'll end with humorous poems. So we have a few books of classic poems. There's the poems that are just that are great, like we like Robert Frost, and I enjoy Wendell Berry, and certainly Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and people like that. But one of the books of poems that our kids really like a lot is called, what is it, Phoebe?
Favorite Poems, Old and New. Favorite
Poems, Old and New. So tell us about, what do you like about these poems, Phoebe?
Well, they're funny, and they have lots of different selections you can enjoy. There's funny, there's poems about nature, there's poems about fairies, there's even old ballads. They're not my favorite.
So who are some of the authors that are included in this particular selection, or this particular book? Now, you've mentioned Ogden Nash before.
Yes. Robert Louis Stevenson, and sometimes even the Bible.
Okay. All right. So is there a particular poem that you like in this selection?
Yes, actually. It's one of the humorous ones, and it's called The Ella Telephony by Laura E. Richards.
All right.
Should I read it?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The Ella Telephony. Once there was an elephant who tried to use the telephant. No, I mean an elephone who tried to use the telephone. Dear me, I am not certain quite that even now I've got it right. Howe'er it was, he got his trunk entangled in the telephunk. The more he tried to get it free, the louder buzzed the telephee. I fear I'd better drop the song of Elephop and Telephone.
Oh, goodness. And this book is filled with poems like this. So it's a great book for people who don't think that they like poetry. Now, you do have to have a sense of humor and appreciate the lighter side of things. But this is one that we've read quite a bit. So, Phoebe, I really appreciate you talking about different literature. I believe this can be helpful to people if they're interested. So thank you for coming and for talking today.
You're welcome. It was really fun.
Appreciate it.